Alright, this is my third time filming this. Last time I each got like 10 minutes in, and then the second time 12 minutes in. And so let's hope I can get more. I said this video is going to be like 15 minutes, but looking at my last two, it's probably going to end up being like like 20 minutes of me doing this. So I'm so sorry for how long it is. I'll try to keep it interesting. So first off, I'm doing Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. Mary Shelley was born in 1797, and this book was made in the late 1800s. I don't know the exact date. I probably could look. It's probably in here, but I don't want to. So it's a pretty good book. I like the writing a lot. It's like fancy enough to where it's old writing and not like boring, and you kind of have to think when you read, but not enough to where you have to think too much. Like, it's not like Dickens. Like, I can never understand what that man is saying. Well, most of the time. Anyway, I could talk for a really long time about some of the literary aspects I like about it. Like, I can tell what her favorite words are. Like, she used the word ardent 4 times in one page, and my pages are pretty small, and so that's like 4 times in 2 to 3 paragraphs. I just find that funny. There's a lot of other things, but you don't want to care about that. So I'm going to just, without further ado, go to the plot. So first things first is, it starts off with letters from this guy named Walton. Walton is his last name. I don't know his first name. It probably tells me. Again, I'm not looking it up. It's not important. So this guy named Walton, he's writing letters to his sister, and in the letters to his sister, he's saying things like, I want to find a friend of the mind, and I kind of like want to meet someone who's smart with me, and like whatever. And he's on this huge expedition to the North Pole, and so he's in like a ship, and he's exploring, and he loves it, and he's very curious, and he's sending these things back to his sister, and I think like England. And it all takes place in like Europe, like France, Germany, Geneva. I don't know where that is. Europe. I think there's some London in there. They go to Ireland at one point. Anyway, so Walton's talking about this, and he's in the Antarctic, and he's like, as he's talking, he talks about how he sees, like the other day, he saw some guy with a dog sled, which is weird because they're in the Arctic, and this is the 1800s, and like there's not that many people going in that cold weather. And then they see another guy, and so they bring this guy aboard, and this guy is obviously something's up. Like, he's having like a depressive episode, but not like the depressive episode where he's sad, just where he's kind of like withdrawn. I mean, he is sad, but like withdrawn and like a little off, and like kind of like down, but also a bit determined. And so they talk to the guy, and he also has some physical health issues, because I mean, he's been walking around in the snow for a long time. And so they talk to this guy, Walton does, and this guy sits him down and is like, if you want to hear my story, I'm going to tell you my story. And this is my story, and I need it to be recorded because it's something that people should learn from, and like, if you want to hear it, here it is, my guy, here you go. And so Walton is like, without further ado, dear sister, here's the story. And so then it starts off in first person from Frankenstein's point of view. And so Victor Frankenstein, the monster is Frankenstein's monster or creature. He doesn't ever name the creature. But yeah, Frankenstein's the guy. It's his last name, Victor Frankenstein. So Frankenstein first lays out like his history, his mom and his dad, who are fairly rich and fairly like good people. I mean, from what I can tell, his family is all made up of pretty good people. Like, I mean, with him being the sociopathic-esque kind of outlier. But good people. And so when he grows up with them, and when he's like 4, they adopt a girl named Elizabeth, who's supposed to be very angelic and like happy and very vivacious. I think that's the word. I don't know. And she's like really nice, and they love her a lot. And then they have 2 other younger brothers, and he's the eldest. And so he also has a friend named Henry Clerval that he grows up with. And so it talks about how he grew up, and he became very interested in the natural sciences and like the theory of existing and all this stuff. And so he first reads books about these guys like Agrippa or whatever, which aren't exactly reputable and are more theory than they are any science. And so he grows up on those, and that's what gets him into the subject. And so eventually he goes to college for the subject because he's so fascinated by it, and he meets 2 professors, and they both respectively be like, those books you were reading, they ain't it, like, they're wrong. But if you want to learn, here's how you learn. And so he learns more about the science aspects and the more correct aspects of the natural sciences and the mysteries of how things work. And so eventually he decides that he wants to know about the mysteries of like life, like that kind of aspect of the natural sciences. And so he starts studying like dead bodies. And so, and it's not like grave robbing, like he's not going out with a shovel that's the same when he's making the monster. He's not like going out with a shovel and digging up graves. He's more of, there's like a coroner-esque kind of office. And again, this is the 1800s. So like, they aren't as advanced as we are now. So it's like a coroner-esque kind of office where the dead bodies are kind of stored. And I guess after funerals, like before they're buried. I don't know. It's like official though. And it's part of the college. And so he studies dead bodies there. And he talks about how it's a bit horrific, but he did learn a lot. And he continues to work to satiate his curiosity. And eventually he like found and studied, and he found an instrument of life. That's what he calls it. Like the instrument of machines of life. And he doesn't tell Walton what it is. Like he specifically says, I can't tell you because it's so awful what happens that I don't need to risk that ever happening again. And so he like doesn't tell Walton what it is. He just calls it his instruments of life. And so once he makes those and figures out he can like create life in a sorts, he decides to make a human-esque creature to like show this and just to see if he can create human life. And so he starts building the creature, and it's less of like an individual arm and more of him like synthesizing the individual parts based off of the dead bodies he'd studied earlier. And so he probably, like, it's a lot more scientific than just sewing like a whole arm from some random person to like the shoulder of someone else. It's a lot more complex, and he spends I think 2 to 3 years on it, and he barely sleeps and he barely eats and he barely like talks to his family. He's just go making this creature. And so he makes this creature strong and like 8 feet tall, and he tries to make it beautiful, like he says. Like he tried to make it look somewhat appeasing, but he completely fails. Like it's evident throughout the book that it's just a very awful looking creature, unfortunately. And so the night he makes it, like he eventually completes it, and he reanimates it, and as soon as it's awake, he's filled with horror. He's like horrified from what he's made. And he talks about like how ugly and demonic it is, and he just calls it a wretch, an ugly wretch the whole time. It's the poor creature, I'm gonna be honest with you. He keeps getting called a wretch, and I'm like, really? A demon or whatever? Anyway. So the thing has like black lips and dark eyes and black hair and really pale and really tall, and just, I'm guessing that Frankenstein didn't do the best on how it looked, so I'm guessing there's just something really off about it. But anyway, Frankenstein is horrified from what he's made, and he just yeets out of the room. He just bolts out of his like college dorm apartment, and he walks around all night long, and eventually in the morning, I lost my train of thought. Okay, so in the morning, he comes upon his friend, Henry, from earlier, who's finally going to the college because his father finally let him, Henry's father. And so he says, hey, Frankenstein, you good? Like, it's good to see you, but you look a little sick. And Frankenstein's like, yeah, I'm definitely fine. Okay. And he tries to retain some aspects of normalcy. And so he says, hey, come back to my apartment. We can, like, chat. And as he's going, like, he's about to go in when he's like, my monster's still there. And, like, he's, like, freaking out again. And so he, like, hold on, Henry. And so he bolts upstairs, and he goes to see if the monster's there. And the monster's not. And he doesn't really freak out about, like, where the monster is. He's more horrified from what he's done, and also relieves that the monster just isn't in his room anymore. And so he takes Henry up, and then, like, they chat a bit. And then Frankenstein, obviously something is up. And he talks about how, like, he was like a bit off the whole time, and so they go see his professors, and like Frankenstein couldn't even look at any of the scientific materials, like instruments and stuff, because they just make him feel awful, and like it was almost post-traumatic stress disorder, honestly, like PTSD about it. And so like he eventually kind of like freaks out, but like something is definitely going on, and Henry notices and takes him back to apartment. And since this is in the olden times, where if you go through enough of an emotional conflict, it causes your body to go into a fever, Frankenstein got legitimately sick, and so Henry takes care of him like the good bro he is, takes care of this guy for like a year. And so Frankenstein is like sick, like his body just went, nope, we didn't like this emotional thing, so we're just gonna be sick. And yeah, he was sick for like a year, and Henry took care of him. And then eventually he gets a bit better. I think it's more of just time helped heal, and he didn't see the monster out the whole time. And so he, where was I? And so he gets a letter from who was it? His father and his sister. Yeah, that's right. His father and his sister. And they tell him, like, hey, we missed you. We haven't seen you. You've been sick for a year. We get letters from Henry. Also, your mom is dead. And so he's like, that's sad. And he's, like, really sad about it. And so he decides to go and see his family because he hasn't seen them in, like, 4 years since he started college. And he wants to help mourn with them. And so he plans to go once he's a bit better. And then he's a bit better. And he's about to go. And the day before he leaves, or maybe even the day he does leave, he gets another letter. And it's like, I know you're coming, and I don't want to burden you coming, but your brother was just murdered, like, last night. And so Frankenstein is like, all right. And so he goes. And so when he gets there, it turns out that a family friend named Justine, who's a girl about his sister's age, so like a year or so younger than him, has been accused of the murder because they found a pendant that had been given to the boy right before he was murdered, of the mother. There was a picture of the mother. They found that in one of her pockets. So she's the number one suspect, but the family doesn't believe it because she's a family friend. And so they, like, are still searching for another suspect, and he goes to the spot where the boy died, and he sees his creature. And he just immediately knows that the creature's the one who did it. And so he freaks out again, and he's like, oh my gosh, this creature is the one who killed my brother. And it's crazy, really. He's more guilty about the fact that he knows who did it and can't say anything, and Justine is going to be wrongly accused, than he is of the fact that his monster, he created the thing that killed his brother. Like, he's not like, I created it, oh my gosh, it killed him, I should have, like, done something or something. He's more, like, he is guilty, he does feel that, but he's more terrified by the fact that he knows and can't do anything. And he's really mad at the monster, which is weird, because he just abandoned the monster, like, the creature, with no regards. He didn't, like, teach it anything, so it's just this, like, child wandering around, but, like, in an 8-foot-tall body. And so he's, like, really mad at the creature. And, like, disgusted by it, and disgusted by himself. And he's kind of freaking out, and he goes into another depressive episode. And his family think it's because both Justine being accused, and the brother being dead, and the mother being dead. And so they just, like, kind of, like, let him mourn, because they think he's mourning, which he is. And so eventually they go to court because Justine has to be accused of the murder. And the first day, like, everyone sticks up for her. Well, like, kind of sticks up for her, and she says she doesn't do it. And then the next day they get news in the morning that she confessed. And so the sister and Frankenstein go, and the sister goes like, hey, Justine, we trusted you. You really didn't kill my brother, did you? And Justine is like, I didn't, but I just didn't want to continue lying. Well, she wasn't lying because she didn't do it, but she didn't want to go through all the stuff, and she told one big lie, and she regretted it, but she just didn't think she would win the case, so she may as well just come out. And so Frankenstein is obviously scarred by this, and Justine gets executed for the murder of his brother. And so then Frankenstein, like, gets really sad and depressed about it, and he goes about his ways, and he starts traveling. And so he travels, like, all over Europe a bit, and eventually he, like, goes to these mountains, and he sees his creature. And his creature comes up to him, like, wanting to talk, and he, like, starts screaming at the creature. Like, he genuinely considers attacking this 8-foot-tall creature he made. And so he's, like, screaming at it and calling it all these, like, rude things. And they're not, like, curse words, 'cause I don't think they cursed as much as we do these days. But it's, like, a lot of, like, you evil wretch and all that stuff. And, like, a demon and murderer and stuff like that. And the monster, which has really great, like, vocabulary and articulation, let me tell you. Like, it's not anything you would expect. Like, his, like, diction is really good. Like, I enjoyed reading some of the things the monster was saying when he's telling a story. And, I don't know, he's not dumb in any means. He's very intuitive, and you'll see. And so the monster's like, listen to me. Please, just let me tell you my story. And Frankenstein is like, fine, you evil thing. You can tell me your story. And so they take him back to, like, this little hut, and the monster starts a story. And so the monster's story is very long, and so it starts, he woke up, and he went, I'm shortening it a lot, so it's a lot, like, more drawn out than this, but I'm giving you the bullet points, because my voice kind of hurts. So monster wakes up and, like, doesn't know what's happening. It can just, like, feel and kind of see things, and it's not processing anything. And so, like, he didn't really understand what was going on. It's like a baby. Like, he's literally brought to life, and so he doesn't really know what's going on. He can just feel things. And so he talks about that, and he goes to a village, and he like tries to get help or like someone to like be nice to him or something. And he gets attacked. And every time he meets a person, they all like scream at him and like try to hit him and like kill him. And so he just kind of like goes off to the woods and tries to eat and live off the land. And so it talks about like his first experience with fire and learning like eating kind of things. And so like every time someone sees him, then like I think he meets like 3 individual like experiences with the humans that he describes, and each time they just ended like screaming. And not him screaming, he just ends up running away because he doesn't know what's going on. And so eventually he sees this like chicken coop-esque thing, and he lives there, and he watches over and creepily stalks this family. And so this family is made up of an old man who's blind, a girl and a guy, and the girl and the guy are probably in their like 20s. They're like not too young. And so he watches this family, and from them he learns love, because they're a pretty healthy family and they love each other, and the brother's a bit sad. And so like he just analyzes this family and learns like familial bonds and like what love is and how caring. And so he starts to like chop wood for them during the night, and then in turn steal some of their food every once in a while, which really they don't know anything about. They don't know anyone's really helping them. They're just kind of like, oh, we get wood every once in a while. Don't know what this is. And the family's kind of poor. And anyway, and so like from them, he learns language. I think he learns French initially. This is in Europe, so like they all know different languages. But he learns like language from them from studying them. So like he's not an idiot. And then someone else comes, the boy's girlfriend. And then it talks about the history of the people, but we don't need to get into that because it's not relevant to the main thing. Anyway, and so from them teaching Felix, the boy's girlfriend, about like English and stuff like that and geography, he stalks them and watches, and he learns as they teach her. And so he eventually just basically gets a schooling from this family. And he like loves them as much as he can, being a stalker and never meeting them. But he learns about all that kind of stuff, and he becomes pretty smart. And then he steals a book and learns how to read. And eventually he works up the nerve to go and meet the grandfather. And so he talks to the grandfather one day, and he's like, I came here to I have friends, and they're going to see me one day, and they're going to hate me, and I love them dearly, and they don't know that I exist. But I really want friends and someone to love, and I just kind of want friends. And he says that to the old man. And the old man's like, oh, that'll be fine. And so he's just chatting kind of with the old man for a little bit, just talking about his friends, the old man, but the old man doesn't know that, who will attack him if they see him. And the old man is like, all right. And then the brother and the sister come, and they can see, the old man can't. And so they come in, and the monster is like, here's your moment of truth. Please be my friend. Please don't let them kick me out. And obviously, the sister and the brother freak out when they see this 8-foot-tall man talking to their blind grandfather, and they start screaming at him and like trying to attack him. And the monster like screams and runs away. And so he's like heartbroken, and he's so lonely. And the poor creature, like he's just trying to find a friend, and everyone keeps trying to kill him. And so eventually he's like walking about, and he sees this little boy. And well, he first went to Geneva, whatever, where Frankenstein's family lived, because he had stolen one of Frankenstein's like notebooks with science and stuff. And so he took those, and he read in there that Frankenstein was from Geneva, so he went to Geneva to find Frankenstein. And there he sees this little boy walking about, and he's like, little boy, what's happening? And the little boy like freaks out, and he's like, oh my God, you're so ugly. And the little boy's like, I'm gonna go tell my papa. His name is Frankenstein. And the monster's like, Frankenstein's your dad? And he's like, oh, there must be my Frankenstein's brother. And so he gets mad, and the little boy's like screaming at him, and he just tries to get the boy to shut up. And so he strangles the boy, and the boy dies. And so the monster was like, oh. And so he goes and runs away to the cabin, and he meets Justine, who's asleep in like a barn cabin thing. And so he puts the pendant that was on the boy in Justine's pocket, and then goes and eats into the cold weather, and then follows Frankenstein, and then talks to Frankenstein. And so when he's done telling his story, he's like, Frankenstein, my dude, I hate myself. I'm an ugly creature. I agree with you, man. I am horrible. People keep trying to attack me. No one can love me. Please just make me a girlfriend. And then me and my girlfriend will go yeet off in South America, and you don't ever have to see us. I just want a companion, and like just one companion, just one buddy, and then we'll leave you alone. And Frankenstein's like, you're so ugly. I could never do something like that again. And then the monster's like, please, I just want a friend. And so the Frankenstein is like, fine, I'll make you a friend, I promise. And so the monster's like, thank you so much. I will leave you alone. Just go make me a girlfriend. And so Frankenstein is like filled with a lot of doubt about this, and he's like kind of freaking out a bit. Like he there's a lot of inner turmoil going on, and so he's not really sure if he should do it, and he doesn't really want to go through the mental like fortitude of making the creature again. And so he's like really worried about it, but he does it anyway, and he goes and he takes his notes that Frankenstein gave him back. No, wait, Frankenstein takes the notes that his monster gave him back, and him and Henry go off to like London or something. And there he collects the supplies, materials, and does a bit more study, and then he leaves Henry and goes to this island. And on this island, he starts to make the monster's girlfriend. And he's like halfway through when one night he's like, this isn't gonna work, because if I make this creature, what if she doesn't like herself or the monster and then just kills the monster? What if she doesn't agree and goes and kills more people? What if? And so he starts thinking, and honestly some of his points are pretty fair, because like he's creating another being and they don't know exactly how this other being is going to respond to the situation. And so like he doesn't know if it's going to hate his monster or if it's going to agree to go and live in South America away from humans. He also doesn't know like if next they're going to ask for children, and if they ask for children then they can just take over the human race or whatever. And so like he comes with all these questions, and he's like freaking out again, but this time it's like full on. And so he goes out and he destroys the female that he's making. Like he like obliterates it or whatever. And so he looks out his window and he walks on the island, and he sees his monster, and his monster is so mad. He's furious. And he can see his creature, and his creature is like, you broke my promise. You promised. So I'm going to see you on your wedding night. Because Frankenstein, prior to leaving for the island, had gotten engaged to his adopted sister, Elizabeth. I forgot to mention that. I'm sorry. But yeah, he's told his sister that after he got home from the island, he'd marry her. And he's not like by blood sister, so it's not technically incest. But anytime you have to say technically incest, it's a bit iffy. But anyway, he was engaged to his adopted sister, and so the monster somehow knew this and screamed, I'll see you on your wedding night, and I will do to you what you've done to me. And he's like, you promised, my dude, you promised. And Frankenstein is like, it's ugly, go away. And so he runs back in, and I honestly think he wanders around at night again, like around the island like he did the first time when he made the monster. And he just, I don't know what he does. And so eventually he goes back and he takes care of the supplies, and he's again freaking out because he's scared what the monster's going to do. And so he gets on his boat after cleaning up the supplies. So he gets on his boat, and he goes and to like nearest land. And he gets to the land, and immediately people are there like, what you doing here? And he's like, and they're like really mean and imposing to him. And it's Ireland. He's in Ireland. And immediately he's accused of murder because they had seen someone the night before, like they found a dead body. And so like he goes to this guy, the like, I don't know who it is, the guy in charge, magistrate maybe? I think that's what it is. So he goes to the magistrate, and the magistrate is like, what you doing here? I mean, we saw a single guy kill someone. And so they took him to see the dead body to see how he'd react, because they're accusing him and they just want to like make sure they got out of there, cover their bases, and they don't have any substantial evidence other than he's a stranger and there's only one guy who they saw murder. Anyway, and so they go in, and Frankenstein immediately collapses because it's Henry, like Henry, his friend. And so it's like really sad, and he's like freaking out, and so he once again is so emotionally conflicted and emotionally entangled that his body shuts down and he goes into a fever and he gets really sick. And the magistrate takes care of him, and he's in jail because, again, he's been accused of murder. But the magistrate takes the letters and from both his father and Henry that were on his person. And so he reads them and talks to the father, and the magistrate believes that Frankenstein isn't guilty. But again, they have to go to court to determine this. And so Frankenstein is being nursed back to health by a nurse and a physician, and that takes a really long time. And so eventually he gets better, and he talks to the magistrate, and the magistrate is like, I believe in your character. I read the letters from your father, I talked to your father, I read the letters from Henry, I just don't think you did it. And so they go to court, and Frankenstein's let out, and the court describes what everyone saw, and I mean, the evidence is kind of aligning on Frankenstein, but there's a lot of holes or whatever. They just saw a single dude get off a boat, kill Henry, and then get back on the boat and leave. Anyway, and so it gets to the point where he goes home with his father, tries to go home. They take it in steps because Ireland to wherever home is a bit long. And so, throughout the way, he goes through the emotional turmoil, and he's worried that Frankenstein's going to kill him on his wedding night, and not Frankenstein, the monster's going to kill him on his wedding night, and he's scared that the monster, he knows the monster killed Henry, and so, the whole time his father's trying to cheer him up, and Frankenstein is just, he's just not having it, and he's filled with a lot of guilt, and he just really wants the monster dead, because it's awful to him, and he's horrified by what's happened, and he's terrified what's going to happen. And so he gets home, and he gets married to his adopted sister, Elizabeth, and then they go on their honeymoon, and the whole time he's carrying pistols and knives, and he's freaking out, and he's getting kind of paranoid. And so their wedding night, he gets really paranoid, and he's like, Elizabeth, you stay at the hotel. You stay at the hotel. I'm going to go and make sure everything's going all right. And so he's really worried for himself, and he just never considered that the monster would attack his girlfriend, his wife. And so he hears a scream, and he goes and checks on it, and it's Elizabeth. The monster had killed Elizabeth. And so, again, he freaks out again. As you can see, there's a common occurrence. Anyway, so he gets, really mad, and they've all been strangled, so, there's a pattern going on, and I'm not sure why no one connected at all. I mean, you can hear my dog barking. It's probably at the cat. I'm so sorry. Anyway, so, he realizes the monster did it and wants revenge, and so he goes out and he talks to the magistrate or a magistrate or someone, a police chief person, and he tells that person the story, and he's like, I want to hunt this monster and kill it because it's killing my people. And so the police officer guy is like, I believe you. Somehow he believes him. He's like, I believe you, we're gonna go kill this creature. And so it kind of summarizes what happens. They start hunting this creature, and they send out a mini militia to go and try to find it. And so they get pretty close to finding it, and that's what leads Frankenstein to Antarctica. And then it goes back to the letters from Walton, and it talks about Frankenstein's deteriorating health, and just him and Walton and Frankenstein become a bit buddies. Is the closest thing to replacing Henry. Frankenstein says something about that. No one ever could replace his best friend and his wife, but he kind of likes Walton as a friend or whatever. And so eventually Frankenstein does die because he gets sick because he's been working himself to the bone, first making the monster, then he was sick because he was scared of the monster, and then mourning, and then trying to make Frankenstein's monster's girlfriend. And so he's just been through a lot, and now that he's hunting his monster, he hasn't been eating enough, and so he's not having it, and so he's almost he dies. And so that night Walton comes into the room, and he sees the monster, and the monster is standing over Frankenstein's body, and he's like, I feel bad, kind of I wanted to get revenge, and I wanted him to feel the same pain I did, but he is still my creator, and I still feel some sort of sympathy for him. And so the monster is I know I'm evil, and I know what I've done is wrong, but I'm so lonely, And he really not regrets what happens, but he feels for what's happening. And he basically says, my work is done. I've tried to get revenge on my creator, and I didn't even successfully kill him. And I mean, I kind of regret what I did. I shouldn't have hurt innocents. I have no reason to live anymore, so I may as well just go kill myself. And so he jumps out of the cabin, and like the cabin of like the ship, and is never seen again. So we can assume that the monster killed himself. So that's the summary, and then it ends, and Walton like kind of reflects about it a bit, but then he ends his letter to his sisters, saying that he's going to go back to England. It's a really good book. I suggest you read it. It's not that long, considering it's such a classic and like iconic. I loved the writing, like I said. I kind of hate Frankenstein. He like doesn't worry about the right things, and he doesn't regret making the monster as much as he should. And honestly, like he just abandoned the poor guy. Like he should have taken responsibility, you know? Like he had a responsibility. When you create something, especially an 8-foot tall monster, you can't just you just abandoned the poor guy. And so of course he's going to lash out. And there's like the whole science behind building up love language, and since the monster never learned anything like that, like of course he's gonna lash out and be mad. And like he was just abandoned. Like the monster isn't as evil at it as it is, and then Frankenstein is sociopathic or psychopathic, but for different reasons than most people think. Yeah, it was really good. It was very interesting to see the inside, and I honestly think Frankenstein is more evil than his monster, despite his monster committing most of the murders. Frankenstein could have avoided it by taking responsibility in the beginning, by, you know, not abandoning the creature he'd made. Like, he abandoned it right away. Like, he didn't even last 5 minutes in the same room as the creature. Again, I obviously left some stuff out, and so I wouldn't take this, like, I don't know, use this not as, like, spark notes, but more of just so you don't ever have to read the book. And I really am sorry for the length, but it is a book, and so I did summarize it the best I could. I'm pretty sure I'm not wrong, but I'm very sure I left stuff out. And if you have any questions, you can, like, DM me or text me or whatever, and I can answer them. I did very much enjoy this book. Next, I think I'm going to do Where the Red Fern Grows, which I've read multiple times, so I should definitely have that done in a week. This one took me a couple, like 2 weeks to read, but that's just because I procrastinated reading it. But yeah, I suggest this to anyone who reads it. If you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can DM me or text me. And yeah, this was Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I really enjoyed it. 10 out of 10. So yeah, thank you.